Welcome to Water Talk with Paul the Waterman, brought to you by Water Pros. Paul the Waterman is Colorado's expert on all things related to the water we use and drink in our homes. Have you ever thought about where your water actually comes from? Is it safe to drink? Is it harmful to my health, my skin, my hair? Paul the Waterman knows water, and he has the answers. Haystack Help Radio proudly presents Water Talk. Now here's your host, Scott Watley, and owner of Water Pros, Paul the Waterman.
Old Ann and I, with throats burned dry and souls that cry for water, water, cool, water, clear, water,
Welcome to Water Talk. This is Paul the Waterman. How are you? I want to thank Scott Watley for allowing us to take over his show today, and I have my partner Mark with me.
Good morning.
Good afternoon,
everybody. Yeah, we just crossed that. We just crossed the afternoon hour.
So a lot of information I want to share with you guys today. If you have any questions for us, you can give us a call here at the studio, 303-477-5600. Couple things that, again, I thought I knew, but now I don't, and it's this was an article that was written a year ago. So last January, 2025, it was founded on CNN, but a group of potential toxic forever chemicals are in our prescription drugs. Now,
how did it get there?
Yeah, so they engineer our prescription drugs to have these forever chemicals involved, so the drugs have a longer contact time and stay in the body. And I also learned that a lot of these, like hip replacements, knee replacements, any kind of joint replacement that they do for you, they coat them with the forever chemical, like Teflon. And if they coat those, they found that the body then doesn't reject them.
Now, Paul, just tell me a little bit about it. Does it work normally, like let's go back to the basics, like a non-Teflon pan, a non-stick pan. And also Teflon is used in rain repellent gear.
Same thing. Same thing. So they coat.
It repels the body from making contact
with it, and it prevents the antibodies in the body to react to treat it as a foreign substance, and then that, because in itself, rejection basically is the body creates like an infection on that, and where you have to take medication to have your body not reject something. Now, organs, surgical replacement organs is a different thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about hip replacements, knee replacements. You got a shoulder joint that you had replaced. People that get fusions in their spine.
Right.
That's or also an artificial heart valve. And scientists also started analyzing water samples that are flowing through 8 large publicly owned wastewater treatment plants across the U.S. The sample sizing serving basically 70% of this area's population. Even with advanced water treatment technologies, they found that forever chemicals and compounds able to transform into them were being discharged into rivers and lakes where they can re-enter the drinking water supply. Roughly 23 million Americans could be exposed to these forever chemicals from wastewater alone. So several times we've talked about the limitations of what a wastewater treatment plant can do.
That's the reason I joined your show.
Yep. And so what's happening is that now the forever chemical problem started during the Manhattan Project, and we've shared that. We went down that road. One of the things that we've also learned is that the forever chemicals, the PFAS, there's now 16,000 different types of forever chemical agents that fall in that family. 16,000. The EPA is only really monitoring 4 out of the 16,000. And one of them they took away was Gen X. So if you do your research,
Go back to just review what Gen X is.
Gen X, yeah, I will do that.
Yep.
So Gen X is a substitute of the forever chemical, the original PFAS.
Okay.
PFAS, PFOs, PFAs. So when they were invented, Mark, they had this, there's so many carbon molecules attached to this that the original PFAS believe it or not, will pass through the body. The original PFAS will pass through the body. What's happened is that when they converted the PFAS formulation to Teflon and that Teflon coating, so what they had to do is they had to create a rough surface. It's almost like, think of this. You know when you go get your garage floor recovered and you want to put a coating on your garage floor or even your basement floor, what they do is they come and they sand your cement, make it a rough surface, so then that that coating, sticks. Same thing with Teflon. So what they do is they take Teflon, they create a rough surface, they spray it on that rough surface, and then it bonds and it sticks. One thing I learned is that if Teflon is heated at over 230 degrees, it can give off a poisonous gas.
230 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right. It gives off a poisonous gas. So 9 times out of 10, that's never going to happen unless you mistakenly put a piece of Teflon in the oven and you turn on the boiler. Then it gives you a poisonous gas. But that Teflon, part of the PFOs, PFAs,
right,
that's the one that basically then what it does is that as it gets into the body, it sticks on the fatty acids. So it sticks and accumulates in the tissue, and that's what doesn't go away. That's what stays in there forever. And everybody in the world has PFAS contamination, the whole world, but the levels of PFAS contamination are different. And some people, they say that if you have less than 1 part per billion or less or PFAS in your body, that's a acceptable range. But majority of the people have close to over 17 parts per billion of PFAS in the body, and that's where you're going to get into trouble.
Paul, tell me, where do you think they came up with this acceptable level of? You said it was 1 part per billion.
1 part per billion. Yeah.
1 part per billion.
So that came from the scientists from DuPont. Great question. That came from the scientists in DuPont and 3M, when in 1961, then they first started doing the testing. They said, okay, they came up with this would be an acceptable range. So that's the DuPont 3M. On a side note, and I'll get back to our main point, but what really gets me is these guys are still in business. That's what gets me. They poison the world, and the whole world's contaminated. Do you realize that PFAS has been around for over 78 years? Because they started in 1944.
1944, okay, right towards the end of World War II.
So, say 78 years, because they knew about it before then, but it was actually started being used.
Right. After
World War II, the United States government allowed DuPont and 3M then to go ahead and market that to the world, and then so that's when you started getting, waterproof nylons, and then the Teflon cookware. Scotchgard was invented. So back to C8 and C6. So the chemical name of Forever Chemicals, the PFAS, original PFAS is C8. So
C8 stands for carbonate. What is C8?
Yeah, that I don't know.
Okay.
I wouldn't even guess. C6 is the name they gave to Gen X. So Gen X was in the original, when the Biden EPA in 2024, when Scott and I first started talking about this, the EPA Gen X was in part of those bad PFAS that the municipality had to test for, and also the municipality had to, remove. I think they have to, by 2027, they need to start mitigating this, right? So now the new administration comes in, and they take Gen X off the table. So what we also know about, thanks to you, is you told us about the EPA's unregulated contamination list. And you also told us it could take up to 13 years for an unregulated contaminant to become a regulated contaminant within the EPA. So the EPA, there's a laundry list of unregulated contaminants. One of them is 1,4-dioxin, and we know that 1,4-dioxin is a carcinogen that's been around since 1863, but that's a different story. But my point is that now we have pharmaceutical medication with using the PFAS component is basically a forever chemical. So that's something that's in our water. Why is it a big deal? Okay, because our community, as we grow, they're brainstorming and they're great ideas that we're going to go to reusable water. Reusable water is going to be the answer to all our questions, to eliminate the need to search for, different water sources, different water reservoirs. We're just going to go from the toilet, right back to the tap.
Well, the concept sounds great. What we were talking about earlier is when reusable water, naturally that takes place. Mm-hmm. So we got goes down the rivers, goes to the oceans, evaporates, goes up the mountains. I mean, we're looking at the beautiful Rocky Mountains behind us. That's like a future water tank. And the snow comes there and it comes back down. On the water side of things, it was like, hey, let's shorten the process and make it closer. But we are removing a lot of the natural effects of filtration that the planet does when we go to full reuse.
Well, the other thing, too, though, is that because of these contaminants we have and this is this word is going to become more and more common. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear this word more and more, the bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation. The bioaccumulation means that these contaminants are everywhere in the environment. So not only are they in our bodies, but they're in the human waste. And then that's an issue that we talked about with human waste and what do we do with human waste. And there's a natural biological process that occurs to break that down. And then they're converted to biosolids and we got to give those away. But if they're loaded with contaminants, then what are we really doing? So the other factor for me is these stories are starting to come out, but they're coming out in places that you really don't know about, that you really don't see. And so I wonder if they're doing that because they can, try to have a clear conscience that, we try to let you know what was going on. But they're not, this should be more of a immediate in-your-face kind of a presentation. And so, we're going to get ready to take our first time out. But when we come back, we're going to talk more about this. We're also going to talk that there's articles out there that you can do your own research and find where even WebMD is talking about drugs in our drinking water.
WebMD of all places?
Drugs in our drinking water. Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that on the other side of the hour, radio show.
We're going to talk also, U.S. News, drinking water contaminated with PFAS is a increased cause of infant mortality. So let's take our first break. We'll be right back. This is Water Talk on Haystack Help Radio.
How much do you need to lower your monthly mortgage payment? $200, $300, $400 or more? As rates decline, take AIM, Affordable Interest Mortgage, 720-895-0500. Over 24 years of saving Coloradans money. Low rates, lower payments, less costs. What makes us different is we listen. As an independent mortgage broker, we shop the top lenders to save you the most. Affordable Interest Mortgage, 720-895-0500. Want to purchase your next home? You can't qualify unless you sell your current home? Let us show you how to get the down payment out of your current home, qualify for the new one, and then sell yours for the most. Affordable Interest Mortgage, 720-895-0500. So you want to buy a home. Let us show you loans that can save you money, low down payment, first-time home buyer specials, fixed rates in the 4s with buy-downs. Call for details, 720-895-0500, or apply now at aimortgage.net. That's Affordable Interest Mortgage, where it's all about you. Regulated by DORA and MLS 217147, Equal Credit Lender.
The holidays are just around the corner. Give your family the quality of water they deserve. With our friends at Water Pros, you can have a whole house conditioner for only $36.95 installed, or a point-of-use reverse osmosis drinking water system for only $1,300 installed. Call Water Pros now, 303-862-5554. That's 303-862-5554, and tell them Scott sent you.
KLZ 560 AM, your home station.
Welcome back to Water Talk on Haystack Help Radio. I'm Paul the Waterman, and I got my partner Mark with me today. Mark, before I forget, I want to tell everybody out there, everybody that's allowed Water Pros, to come into your home. I want to wish, and our radio listeners, a very, very heartfelt Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Okay, so in this article from CNN that almost a year ago, one of the things is that they state that there's a large amount of chemicals that they know very little about. And they mention about 15,000, nearly 15,000 of the collective PFAS. Now I'm going to try to pronounce this, perfluoroalkyl, I can't pronounce that. And then polyfluoroalkyl substance. Can you try to pronounce those two?
Oh, you want me to do it live on the radio, right?
Well, I can't. I'm tripping over my tongue there.
It sounds like, perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
So
close enough.
Right. When they make a word this big and that hard to pronounce, it's a very serious contaminant, right? Why not make it easy? So we call it the PFAS, PFOs and PFAs. But one of the things that, they're identifying these large amounts of chemicals they know very little about. Well, I think they do. I think they know a lot about them. You realize that when they started this, 1 part per billion is, they said, okay, you can't have more than 1 part per billion. And then 1 part per billion is not a lot. And then it went from 1 part per billion down to 4 part per trillion. That's not a lot. But what that is that it's small enough that I think their mindset. Now, the scientists in DuPont knew this was harmful, and they didn't tell anybody. They knew this was harmful from the very beginning. In the 60s, they started testing lab mice, lab rats, even monkeys. And I don't know why that really bothered me when I read that. They were poisoning monkeys with this contaminant, and, liver cancer, kidney cancer, testicular cancer, and, they died. And so they knew how bad it was, but they weren't saying anything. Now, in the 70s, when they passed that Clean, Safe Drinking Water Act.
The EPA, 1971, finalized in about 1973.
Okay. That mandated manufacturers and factories they were obligated to report any contamination, which, again, they didn't do. And the only reason this came out was because of a lawsuit, and it started in North Carolina. And also, I believe in the farm in Virginia, where this farmer lived right next to a DuPont plant. They were dumping all this waste into the landfills that was getting into the stream that was in the pastures that the cows were drinking from, and they all dropped dead.
And what was it, about 4 months ago? You played a little bit of that on the radio.
We played that
and
story.
The people turned against him.
They turned against him.
It's like, hey, this is a problem. But it was a company town.
That's right.
And it was like, hey, you're threatening the company town. It was like, hey, they're poisoning us.
He was trying to let everybody know.
We had to
That's
stop.
right.
And people wouldn't even talk to him.
So if you go to waterpros.net, we have a modern-day video that was done that explains everything that we're talking about here today, but also talks about, so then it was the legal process. And it took that attorney basically to go through 60,000 documents, and that's when he found C8, and that's what C8 was to PFOs, PFAs.
Right.
Then he found C6. So once they knew PFAS was really bad, then they tried to come up with a smaller molecular structure version of it, but it turned out that it was just as potent, just as bad. But that's what they're currently using today. So my point is, if they get rid of and stop the PFAS, which they're supposed to voluntarily do this year, 2025, it doesn't mean anything, Mark, because they're still using Gen X, which is just as potent and just as bad. So,
and we are just seeing the effects of C8 now.
Well, they're bringing it to light. They're bringing it to light.
When you had done some coverage on just the application of biosolids onto agricultural land, approximately about 70 million acres of agricultural land has been contaminated with PFAS from biosolids application. So to give you an idea about the size of the state of Colorado is about 60 million acres. And which is about, the agricultural land has been contaminated by PFAS, about 1/5 of agricultural land. So that, that's been slowly, and what, Paul has talked about the bioaccumulation. The bioaccumulation is you're adding more onto what you're able to get rid of. And that's ending up in the soil, and then that's slowly working its way into the aquifers, which is slowly working its way into the rivers.
That's just one part of it, though.
Yeah, that's just one part of the source that's coming here.
The other, they say also PFAS contamination is now in the both polar caps. So the the
How did it end up there?
moisture.
So it got
north
carried
of-
up. It got carried up in the rain. It got carried up in
and
the
then snow,
evaporation.
evaporation in the ocean, the currents. So both polar caps have PFAS. They've done studies at the North Pole, Antarctica. Polar bears have PFAS in their blood. It got so bad that if you go, Minnesota's in the news because of all the waste, the fraud with these government money grants that they got because of COVID-19. Well, also Minnesota's in the news. If you look up Minnesota PFAS, 3M, which stands for Minnesota Manufacturing and Mining, I believe, is what 3M stands for. They dump so much contaminant in the lakes, in rivers in Minnesota, that an independent scientist with the Minnesota EPA was doing some research, and she tested fish, and the fish that she tested had more PFAS than blood.
What was it? 3 weeks ago, 4 months ago, I think you were kind of exposing that they are looking at regulating the amount of fish that you can have.
That's right.
Now, you used to remember mercury. The mercury was a big deal. It's just like you only can have so many cans of tuna a day or a week or something until you reach the maximum recommended contamination or bioaccumulation of mercury in your bloodstream. Now it's coming up to other things, and the PFAS is one of the forerunners after mercury.
Well, if they're limiting the fish that we eat, they did that. Scott and I talked about that last week, where there was 3 main bodies of water in the metro area. Chatfield was one of them.
Chatfield
was one of them where they basically only eat 1 fish per month, kind of a thing. My concern is now, because they get through the contamination comes from wastewater. The contamination comes from rainwater. You know what the other contamination it comes from and is still there because of the Gen X chemical? Food packaging. You go to Starbucks, get a cup of coffee, and if it's
in the liner of the cup.
Coffee cup, microwave popcorn bags, in the liner of the microwave popcorn, fast food hamburger wrappers, in the liner of the wrappers.
Is that all C6 now?
Well, it's supposed to be.
Okay.
But so on the video that's up on YouTube, on waterpros.net from YouTube, they also did a study, and the 2 people that were doing the program tested their blood for PFAS contamination. And one of the main interviewers, or the guy that did this documentary, let's call it, you'll see his PFAS and his contamination, his blood level was over 17 parts per billion.
16 being the maximum.
No,
you were saying you're 1 part per billion.
1 part per billion, but
is detectable.
If you're at 17, over 16 and 17 range, that's when you can be susceptible to the kidney cancer, the liver cancer, the testicular cancer. So this is something I think, as part of your yearly, physical, is that people are going to want to get their blood tested for PFAS. So why we're bringing this up is there's a solution. Point of use reverse osmosis for drinking water. Everybody needs to have a reverse osmosis for their drinking water. You get the free water test because water hardness absolutely associates with, how that reverse osmosis is going to function. Now, in your field, when you do, you get rid of the waste and you create that natural, biology where waste can break down.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But while you're doing that, that's also biology won't break down the forever chemical.
They don't break down the microplastics. They don't break down the pharmaceuticals.
And when pharmaceuticals are coated basically with these forever chemicals, these PFAS, the other thing that I was worried about, and I want to, I have a family member that's, has her doctorate's degree in microbiology. She told me, was the first one to tell me that, when you take a medication and that medication leaves your body, it's a metabolic. So then when somebody else drinks that glass of water with that metabolized medication, it's absorbed. And so what's happening is that the accumulation state, now we have to think big picture. Here's the big picture. Let's just go back 50 years. Let's go back, only 50 years. 50 years we knew that contamination was really bad. So that puts us, 1975. If we go back 50 years and we've had that buildup occurred over and over again, and we're getting everything accumulating, something else that they said that these PFAS are part of? Makeup. So water-resistant makeup,
right.
The makeup that we use, and so we're putting that on our face. The women are putting on their face and the eyeliner, the mascara. Anything that's water-resistant is a PFAS. Now, the Gen X, and the thing that gets me is they know it's bad, and this is where the conspiracy theory, plays. Is if you know something's really bad, why allow it? Case in point.
Catch me if you can.
1,4-dioxin is an industrial stabilizer that's been used since, I think I found 1863, and it's still being used today. And it's an unregulated contaminant. Why? So I'm sure somebody turned it into the EPA. And it's bad when the state of New York, wants to eliminate 1,4-dioxin. But they passed a law to eliminate it, but there's loopholes that still allow it, believe it or not.
Well, Paul, earlier, you know what an insurance actuary is?
No.
So an insurance actuary, they take a look at the costs and benefits of anything, and then they calculate what the insurance rates are. Typical, like I was saying earlier, catch me if you can. How far pharmaceutical companies work, they will weigh the profit potential versus the consequences. And they will okay, if we can make a profit on this before it gets pulled off from the market, outside the research costs on it, if the potential revenue can outweigh all the research costs on it, they're going to do it until it gets pulled off the market.
And then they'll hire lobbyists to basically go to
slow it down
and donate to anybody's campaign cover that they can to slow down.
We need to kick this down. Remember, Paulie was what was the regulation the EPA was going to do on PFAS in drinking water, and then all of a sudden that just kind of got postponed a little bit, and I was I wonder why.
They extended the time because of affordability. One of the things that
affordability for who?
Well, for municipalities to come up to meet the regulations. One of the things that I mentioned to Scott when we were first talking about this a couple years ago. The Biden administration was giving out grants of millions of dollars to municipalities to upgrade their system to be able to deal with this. And the first thing I said is that's not going to go to the municipalities.
Right.
That's going to be funneled out to somebody else.
Right.
So it's an issue. Okay. When we get back, we still got to talk about the PFAS with infant mortality. I still got more information on pharmaceuticals that I want to share with you. So we'll see you here in about a couple minutes. Haystack Help Radio.
Hey, Dan, our jobs are pretty different. I'm a baseball announcer. You're an attorney and a talk show host.
Yeah, but we do have something in common.
Really? What's that?
Our favorite car dealer, Len Lyle Chevrolet.
Yeah, definitely not your typical dealership.
That's so true, Jack. No high-pressure sales tactics. They respect your time. And when you have two jobs, that's important.
I'd recommend Len Lyle Chevrolet to anyone. And with their low overhead, that means
lower prices. Yeah, we really do have something in common.
Len Lyle Chevrolet. Go east and pay the least. Chevy, find new roads.
Looking for top quality hunting, fishing, and camping gear without the high prices? Head to the Outdoorsman's Attic, Colorado's premier outdoor consignment store at 2650 West Hampden in Sheridan. You'll find wall-to-wall gear for upland bird hunting, waterfowl, ice fishing, and big game adventures, all at prices up to 50% off retail. Whether you're gearing up for your next hunt or cleaning out your closet, buy, sell, save at the Outdoorsman's Attic, where every trip feels like opening day. Come see Colorado's largest consignment store for hunting, fishing, and camping gear. It's the Outdoorsman's Attic, 2650 West Hampden in Sheridan, and tell them Scott sent you.
Turn a normal day into an adventure on an e-bike. Hi, I'm Randy Caranci, founder of E-Bike of Colorado. E-bikes are a fun way to ride around town. Just try it. Pedal assist technology flattens the steepest hills. We have 14 major brands to choose from, and our expert staff will find you the perfect bike. Come take a free test ride at E-Bike of Colorado in downtown Louisville next to the historic grain elevator. Open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Learn more at ebikeofcolorado.com. Just try it.
Need new glasses fast? With Stack Optical's on-site lab, you'll get your prescription glasses in just 3 to 4 days. No long wait times. Hey, this is Scott Watley, and I've trusted my eye care to Allen Stack and Stack Optical for the last 15 years. Eye exams are only $69, and that should be a part of your physical checkups each year. For over 50 years, Denver has trusted this family-owned boutique eye care center for premium vision care, custom eyewear, and expert repairs. See the Stack Optical difference today. Call 303-321-1578. That's 303-321-1578 and tell them Scott sent you. Stack Optical. Since 1968, at Stack Optical, you'll see the difference.
AM 560, KLZ, your home station.
Welcome back to Water Talk. Thank you for being with us. If you have any questions or comments on our topic, you can call our hotline at 303-477-5600.
Stop the Paul. Stop the Paul.
So, okay, let's get into U.S. news. This article was done December 8th of 2025, so not too long ago. The headline at the top of the article says, drinking water contaminated with PFAS probably increases risk of infant mortality, study finds. Study of over 11,000 births in the state of New Hampshire showed residents' reproductive outcomes near contaminated sites. So the drinking water contaminated with PFAS chemicals probably increased the infant mortality in newborns. 11,000 births it found. It studied 11,000 births. Out of those 11,000, PFAS contaminated the sites that tied to increase in infant mortality. The increase become of contaminated sites of 191%. And then it increased those that were born prematurely 20%. It was also tied to increase extremely premature and extremely low weight births. That increased 168 to 180%. So I can't help but wonder what's the real number nationwide. So thanks to the state of New Hampshire. And then here's something else in their findings, that they think the cost to the U.S. population, the author of this report, negative health impact and negative effect to comply with the regulations. So the negative cost impact to health, the healthcare system, they think is going to be over $8 billion. And then the negative effect for municipalities to comply with current regulations to remove PFAS in the drinking water is going to cost an estimated $3.8 billion.
$3.8 billion.
Yeah. So I think that's underestimated because you've mentioned this to us before. There's a lot of municipalities that have infrastructure that's extremely old, that needs to really be updated. Think about these big cities like New York.
New York running on infrastructure that's over 100 years old.
Exactly. And so in my concern then, back to this reusable water, everything we're talking about is at the current metrics right now. But California, I'd love to see if they go out and do studies in California, especially San Diego, to see what's really going on there with the water supply. In fact, in the video that's on waterpros.net, the gentleman that had that over 16 to 17 part per billion in his blood, he used a water system that was in California that was one of the highest levels in the nation. So you can go online and you can find a map, nationwide map of high PFAS contaminated bodies of water. They're putting that together. Colorado has one of them.
Better yet, go to waterpros.net. How do you get to? Is there a blog tab or what?
There's a blog tab,
and
we've got the information there on blog. My question then, let's kind of refresh. Because of how wastewater comes in, and then you guys basically separate the human contaminant, and then we let the other water go to it basically off-site. Explain that, what happens from that point until you release it.
So there's two big processes in wastewater treatment plant. The very first process is just getting the paper and grit out of the water, and the papers from the toilet paper, from anything people dump down the toilet. A lot of people think like wastewater treatment plants are like trash cans. They're not.
Right.
The next process is to remove the grit. The grit comes from a lot of maybe the breakdown in the collection lines. Those are the sewer lines. But people run through the garbage disposal. So the fish or your bones. It could be your eggshells. It could be those two primary components. And the next step, once those get removed out, the next step is just an accelerated form of biology. The natural coming from us when we poop and we pee. We two things come out of us.
Can we say that in there?
Can we say that? Is ammonia that comes out, so that's what it makes the smell of urine, and then carbon, and we take that and use those two components to kind of do an accelerated form of biology.
That means degrade everything.
Yeah. So
degrade
it
everything.
breaks down the ammonias to nitrites and nitrates. We're going to be talking about that soon. And then we go for that's used for an air on period. And then the air shut off to break down the nitrites and nitrates into nitrogen gas, water, carbon dioxide. And then that goes out the back door, and wherever the wastewater treatment plant's located at, typically a lot of them are downstream from a municipality. It usually goes back into the rivers or lakes. So
the point of this is that there's not one of those processes will eliminate PFAS from the water supply. I just saw something. The CNN article that I was talking about, they said nearly 15,000 of the known PFAS contamination chemicals. Then the one from U.S. News, they're saying there's over 16,000 of those PFAS contamination chemicals. I don't think.
How far do you know? It seems like it's been exponential, because it was like a year ago. It seemed like, or a couple of years ago, it was 5,000.
Well, it started out. The original story started with 4.
And then it jumped to
Scott. I remember Scott looked, and it jumped to like around 157. And so now we're over between 15 to 16,000. PFAs are classes of at least 16,000 compounds often used to help products water resistant. So we have the stains, the forever chemicals. I mentioned makeup, but now they're also estimating that they're linked to serious health problems such as cancer, kidney disease, liver problems, immune disorders, and birth defects. So when they say, one article says we don't know what you know what you know what you know you know what you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. They do. Yeah. They absolutely do. Yeah. I can't help but think that this is also one of the reasons why cancer is increasing, and colon cancer in young adults.
I'm going to attest to that. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe I knew one person had cancer. I know 15 or 20 people right now to have cancer, and for one degree or another. It's like, what happened just recently from I think there was I remember studying a while back in the 1950s, there was the first case of childhood cancer, and physicians flew all around the nation to see this kid. There's like, I can't believe that this kid has cancer. Now there's entire wings dedicated just for childhood cancer treatment. So from the article U.S. News, the federal government is quoting the federal government states they estimate that over 95 million Americans across the country are drinking contaminated waters from private wells with PFAS. 95 million. I think that's a low number. I think what we... hold on. Stop. Say that again. 95 million Americans. 95 million Americans. Are across the country are drinking contaminated water from public or private wells. Public or private wells. Okay. Yep. So I think that's higher. I mean, that's a low number. I mean, for me, we were, I was citing earlier, like 77 million acres of agricultural land, which is about 1/5 of the agricultural land in the United States, has been contaminated by sewer sludge. Well, I think that's that's how I said, like, that's how it's gotten into That's what's been reported.
Well, right, because now we know why. All right, common sense is not so common anymore. I used to say common sense is a dying commodity, but my wife told me not to say that. So common sense is not so common anymore. Here we go.
Especially when they got rid of the pennies.
Well, if the whole state of Minnesota is contaminated because of 3M, right? So, that's that whole state, and they have their bodies of water contaminated where you can't eat the fish. Where does their biosolids go? On their farmland?
They're looking at banning it.
Right. But in North Carolina, where DuPont poisoned, the whole community, the whole state of North Carolina, where's those biosolids going? Everybody, if they say that everybody in the United States, every single person has a form of PFAS contamination in them, then how can they say there's a limit to what the contamination is from biosolids? Because it means that every single biosolid, every single municipal wastewater supply is biosolids with PFAS.
Right.
So I think it's, the whole world is one big PFAS contamination dump site. Now, pharmaceuticals. You add pharmaceuticals to that. And real quick, I want to point this out. So this is from WebMD. Tiny amounts of pharmaceuticals, including antibiotics, hormones, mood stabilizers, and other drugs, are in our drinking water supplies, according to a media report. In an investigation by the Associated Press, drinking water supplies in 24 major metropolitan areas were found to include drugs. Now, another little article here. Trace pharmaceuticals. Long-term effects of consuming low levels of pharmaceuticals throughout drinking water are not fully understood. Baloney. I think, I don't buy that. But the potential risks are concerning. Some of the major categories of pharmaceuticals detected in water include synthetic hormones from birth control, antidepressants, chemotherapy agents. And what if those chemotherapy agents they're using, have the PFAS contamination because they want it to be in the body longer? Painkillers, antibiotics.
Hormone blockers.
They can all be endocrine disruptors. Synthetic hormones from contraceptives and other hormones-based drugs can disrupt endocrine systems in both humans and wildlife. Mm-hmm. So, we have this issue. We have contamination from PFAS. So I think PFAS, because it attaches itself to the fatty acid, it makes sense. Then, it sticks in the body forever. Why they would want that to be part of the medication. But, now we have antibiotic-resistant bacteria that's occurring. And is that occurring because we have a never-ending cycle of every glass of water that we drink that doesn't go through reverse osmosis, you're drinking somebody else's medication?
I think this gray, Paul, is just like, if I no longer do I have to go to the pharmacy, I just need to take a glass of water.
That's right. The doctor's going to tell you, drink 5 glasses of water today and you should feel better. If not, call me in the morning. Oh, my goodness. Okay, we're going to take our last break. And when we come back, Mark's going to have some information. We're going to end our show on talking about nitrates, nitrate contamination, where it comes from. And in Iowa, they have a problem with that. And we want to talk about that because we also think that it's not just Iowa that's going to have the issue. So we'll be right back.
Here's why you need personal injury attorney Kevin Flesh on your side. He understands the way the jury thinks. In the context of a personal injury case, you've been hurt by someone else's negligence. The idea is that you're going to try to recover so that you can get back to where you were just prior to that incident occurring. What that really means from a jurist perspective is that you're going to be asking them to award you money. So when we talk about fairness, we're talking about 6 people that you don't know. Those 6 people view the evidence and make a unanimous decision that will decide what the fair value is. When you're the one who's hurt, you have a good idea of what you think it's worth. The question is, can you persuade those other individuals whom you don't know and were witnesses to believe that's what the case is worth? Kevin Flesh understands the way the jury thinks. Call now for a free consultation, 303-806-8886.
During the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, it's easy to forget how chaotic days, typical for this time of year, can affect our pets. Hey, this is Scott Watley from my friends at Lone Tree Veterinary Medical Center. Their staff understands how disruptions in daily routine can create stress and anxiety for our pets. Most pets need daily structure. New sounds and smells, visitors coming over, and other distractions can sometimes be overwhelming for pets and lead to unwanted behaviors. So even though your days are busy, remember your pets. Take time to show your love and appreciation for the joys of companionship they bring to your home. Extra hugs, a special treat. Walks outdoors and indoor playtime can help assure our pets that everything is still okay. And if you need help, Lone Tree Veterinary Medical Center is just a phone call away. Whether it's medical care, dentistry, surgery, boarding, grooming, behavior training, pet food, or care products, they are there for your pets. Visit them at LoneTreeVet.com or call 303-708-8050 Monday through Saturday. That's 303-708-8050. Lone Tree Veterinary Medical Center. It's the place where my pets go.
This is AM 560 KLZ, your home station.
Welcome back to Water Talk and Haystack Help Radio. It's Paul the Waterman. Mark's with me today, and Scott is busy helping Santa Claus at the North Pole. They needed his help. That's what happened.
Last time I've been up there.
That's what happened. Scott got called up to the North Pole. Yeah, well, it's that crunch time. So let's talk about nitrates. Nitrates is contaminating a lot of communities in the Midwest, Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, a lot of the Kansas, because nitrogen is used as a fertilizer in farm grounds. And so, right. Mark, why don't you kind of fill us in what's going on there?
Yeah, Paul just kind of shared this article with me. So typically in agricultural states, Iowa being one of them, they make corn. And I think Iowa's probably the one, I'm just speculating, I think Iowa's probably number one producer of corn.
It's just Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, they're all, the farm belts, Michigan, corn, soybeans.
Requires a lot of fertilizer.
And when they don't do crop rotation, meaning they, stick, normally crop rotations, you go from corns to soybeans and then soybeans back to corn. Anyway.
The corny joke.
Right. So nitrogen is used. And what's going on is that the wells are getting contaminated, with all the nitrogen use.
So when you're drilling a well, you want to try to drill as least amount as you possibly can. And so there's what's called a confined aquifer and a non-confined aquifer. And a confined aquifer is like a layer of water that's protected by something that is this word always makes me laugh. It's called an aquatard. So aquatard, yeah. You're such an aquatard.
Oh my
gosh. So it could be granite. Or it could be a hard substance that water can't penetrate in.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the agricultural wells in that area are what's called alluvial. So they're shallow wells. And so what happens is because corn requires a lot of nitrites for the fertilizer, that gets applied on there, and then that absorbs into the ground and works itself down. Whatever the roots don't pick up, the roots are fairly shallow. So maybe, I don't know how deep a root for corn is, 6 inches at the very most.
Very shallow roots, absolutely.
And that ends up working itself down in the aquifer, and then maybe that gets cycled back through it. So in Iowa, the problem is that there's a regulation on the amount of contaminants that can be in drinking water. So the EPA sets strict drinking water standards for nitrates and nitrites. The maximum contaminant level, which is called an MCL, maximum contaminant level, it's about 10 milligrams per liter for nitrate, and then 1 for nitrite. And so what happens if you get too much nitrites or nitrates in your bloodstream, it prohibits the body from exchanging oxygen. So
blue baby syndrome.
So blue baby syndrome, when somebody actually has hypothermia, their oxygen circulation starts to go down. They start to get the blue lips, and the same thing will happen and it's more likely to happen, and I don't know exactly why, but that's why they call it blue baby syndrome, because babies are more likely to show the symptoms as opposed to adults of low oxygen in their bloodstream.
And what's really dangerous about nitrites in the water is that when you boil water, they don't evaporate. They stay in the water. And so when your water level boils down, the higher levels of nitrates you could have. So
everything becomes more concentrated.
And so here in Colorado, people in well water, nitrates absolutely can be an issue, especially in the dairy region in northern Colorado, Greeley,
right,
Alt. Folks out there, if you're listening to us, nitrates are very common in your well water.
Why?
Because of the dairy farm and
the dairy farm and the manure.
That's it. Yep. That's right. And so all that is dumped on.
Pig farms are really big. Chicken farms are a big source as well.
And chicken manure has that high ammonia content too. Mm-hmm. So you can remove all that with a whole house anion resin based system or a point of use reverse osmosis unit, but everything really starts with soft water, because when you're talking about these contaminants, your reverse osmosis system and your anion resin system cannot be occupied by hardness, because hardness will follow both those out. One thing I want to mention: be careful what you purchase online. We had a customer that looked at a filter system, and then I said, "Hey, what's the minimum hardness requirements?" Because you really want to pay attention to that. You want to buy a whole house filter. Mm-hmm. I looked at it. And the maximum hardness levels that it said in the brochure was between 3 to 7 grains per gallon. Well, everybody in the metro area, has 3 to 7 grains per gallon of hardness. But in her neighborhood, it was over 15 grains. So that means that filter system wouldn't work. So just be careful, buying filters online. I'd love, if you have any questions, you can give us a call. I'd answer any questions that you have. Because the last thing is you want people to purchase something that they think is going to work for them, and it doesn't. I think it's extremely irresponsible for anybody or any operator on the phone to say, well, this filter will last over 33,000 gallons of water. How can you say that?
Describe a little bit what hard water is versus soft water.
Hardness is a liquid called calcium carbonate. As it oxidizes, it converts to that scale.
Oxidizes, it gets exposed to air. Okay, there's a reaction with the air.
Air comes in contact, it goes to a scale. Scale will build up on those filters and impede water flow rate. Case in point, a refrigerator filter that, where you have the ice maker and water dispenser, and you see all the calcium deposits around that. So hard water overran that filter. That filter isn't filtering.
Right.
So you see the contamination of hard water. Hard water builds up in filters, and then the filter doesn't absorb the water, so you're not filtering anything.
If you're in your house, what telltale signs, like maybe in your sink or your toilet, can indicate is your water soft or is it if it's hard?
Take the kitchen. Most kitchen faucets nowadays have the sprayer and faucet are all one.
Okay.
Take your kitchen sink faucet, turn it upside down, and if you got a bunch of calcium deposits built up underneath, that's hard water. Pull the lid off the toilet tank or the holding water. Take a look at inside there. Is the bowl stained? With the holding tank of the toilet tank, that's exactly what's in your water lines, what's in your hot water heater.
If it's stained red, what does that mean?
Iron content.
And stained white, what does that mean?
A lot of calcium buildup.
Okay.
But check this out, what people don't realize. What's in that toilet tank is the water you're drinking. Toilet tank water is the same water that comes out. It's the water you're drinking.
And it's a survival technique. Is like if the water's down, a safe place to get some emergency waters out of your toilet tank. Upper tank. Not the lower tank.
Upper tank. Not in the bowl.
Make that
Stay out of the bowl. The bowl.
We are doing a disclaimer here.
Okay. So one of the things, too, that you really want to think about is that now everything that we've mentioned here in the short time that we're with you this afternoon, you're going to use the same quality of water to cook the holiday meal. And, with microplastics, the pharmaceuticals, now we know that pharmaceuticals has the forever chemical agent in there. The forever chemical has basically taken over the world. Pharmaceutical contamination, we're only at the tip of the iceberg. They know it's there. We just got to do our own research. We got to find that right source. We need to find the guy that's the whistleblower. We need a whistleblower to come out to say, hey, America, this is how bad it is, because it's really bad. And what you got to think about. Other countries that don't have regulations like we do, we know China's globally poisoning the world. They don't care. They're dumping any industrial waste they can in the waterways. And when that happens, and by evaporation, I think it's called the hydrological cycle, where that occurs, then it gets in, spreads all over. Rain contaminates the ocean. Ocean then basically... Right. And the amount of plastics that come in the ocean, it's insane. You know, the microplastics is a problem. Microplastics we talked about get into our body. Microplastics can take any carcinogen, any metal. Microplastics are as bad for you as turbidity is, and turbidity is floaty dirt. A lot of folks in Castle Rock area, Perry Park Road, have turbidity. A lot of folks out east, outside of Watkins, Byers, you can have turbidity, which is floaty dirt. If you got a glass of water and it looks gray and cloudy, don't drink it. And if you got a glass of water that's gray and cloudy and then you let it sit, and then at the bottom as it clears, there's a bunch of gray silt in the bottom of that glass, that's high levels of turbidity. Don't drink it.
What Paul is trying to provide here is if you want to, we've covered several different ways that PFAS can get in our system. If you want to slow down getting PFAS through your medication, look at maybe cutting back on your medication. If you want to prevent it from getting in your food, buy local. If you want to prevent it from getting in your drinking water, 100% insurance, it'll work. Get
reverse osmosis. You know, one of the things that, because, you know, it's a great point, Mark, one of the things you guys really want to think about too is when we use the word bioaccumulation, that's basically, it's all over the environment.
We're looking at ways to eliminate the source of the multiple sources of the bioaccumulation that's taking place in our bodies right now.
So what's happening is
here's one solution.
It's already in the food, it's in the vegetables, it's in the fruit, it's in the meat products, it's already there. This contamination that we have is in every aspect of our life.
Right.
But one of the things that you could do to improve that, you know, on a side note, you know, one way to expel PFAS is to give birth or to give blood. And that's truth. They find high levels of PFAS in the umbilical cord. So you give birth, the mother passes it on to the baby. You give blood. By giving blood, you get rid of, you know,
babies
and blood.
Babies and blood.
Babies. Oh, shoot. Okay. We're going to run out of time. So jingle bells, jingle all the way. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. So from Mark and I and Scott, who's working with Santa Claus right now, we wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Take care. Thanks for joining us.
The views and opinions expressed on KLZ 560 are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect those of Crawford Broadcasting, the station, management, employees, associates, or advertisers. KLZ 560 is a Crawford Broadcasting God and Country station.